My name is Alison Smith, and I have been lucky and privileged enough to be a professional theatre actor for the last 35 years. I've worked with theatre companies in Barbados and across Canada, but there are three companies that are associated with me because I had something to do with their founding or with their day-to-day activities, and that's the Obsidian Theatre Company that was founded in 2000 in Toronto, Ontario, and then Diasporic Arts Productions is a company here in Barbados that I founded on my return to Barbados in 2009, and then just recently I've been working with Rosemary and David Nealons on the Gap Theatre. How did I first, what was my first theatre experience? I guess I would have been exposed to theatre in Barbados, the pantomimes. St. Winifred's used to do a pantomime, and at Queen's College we did our pantomimes as well, and there was Daphne Joseph Hackett. I would have been exposed to theatre there. But my first performance predates anything that I can remember about theatre itself, because when I was about 8 years old, I was at the Ursuline Convent, and I catch a vaps. I catch a performing vaps. Some kind of performing muse settled on my head, and I needed to express myself. I don't know exactly what it was that I did. Must have looked quite Pentecostal, because I think I must have spoken in tongues. I cavorted and jumped and communed, and the next thing I knew, I look and I see a whole bunch of little boys and girls sitting down there looking at me like that, and I went, ooh, I like that. I can make them sit down and watch. So every lunch hour, I don't know, I recited things. When I ran out of things in English, I spoke in my own language. And each day, the boys and girls came and they watched. What spoilt it was that the nuns decided that they would now make it mandatory, that 5 minutes before the bell rang, because they figured out it was a really cool way of getting the kids to settle down before they had to go back to class. So the bell would now ring 5 minutes early so that people could come and watch Alison Seeley before they went to class, which of course took all of the fun out of it for me and for the kids involved, and it died its own death. But that was certainly my first exposure to the world of performing, and at 8 I decided I liked it. And I've been lucky enough to be able to do it for the rest of my life, which is really cool. Some of my earliest experiences in sort of more formalized theatre happened again between Barbados and Canada. In 1980, I graduated from University, Sackville, New Brunswick, and I hitchhiked from Sackville, New Brunswick to Toronto, Ontario to become an actress. Had no idea how I was going to do this. Had a degree in psychology, which didn't really help that much. But things that are meant to be happen. So I got a job in a store selling a bunch of rattan furniture. Wasn't very stimulating. Decided retail really wasn't for me. So I went at that time in Canada, they had something called a manpower office. Of course, it's politically incorrect right now to talk about manpower. I'm sure it must have changed to an employment bureau fairly soon after that. But back in the day, it was a manpower office. And you walked into this office, a little bit like this room that we're in, except that there would have been lots of easels and long, big, I don't even know what you call them, but on them would have been small cards, and all of them had on jobs that you could go and apply for. So every day I went up and down looking for the job of a lifetime, which tends not to exist in manpower offices. But one day when I went, I saw actor wanted in a manpower office. So I went and I applied, and I auditioned, and I ended up in what was called then Canada's first multicultural community neighborhood theatre. And I got my job, so the first job that I got that I would have been paid money for was in 1981 with this company. And what was really cool about the company, we did all kinds of wonderful stuff, but we ended up at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, which was really cool in 1985. So that was my first, and we performed in parks, and we had to drum up audiences, so we would put on weird clothes and bang drums and walk through people's neighborhoods, keeping far too much noise and trying to entice them to come to the park. And you had to compete with the dogs that would walk through the performance space and so on. And then the government of Barbados got a little bit upset because, you see, I was on a Barbados scholarship and I was supposed to come home and work it off, but I was far too busy starting my acting career. And then my father called and said he'd gotten a call from the Ministry of Education saying that unless Alison Seeley presented herself at home within the next couple of months, they were coming to him to pay back the whole $40,000 that was the Barbados scholarship. That and some choice words from my father got me on the flight back home with my 2-week-old infant daughter in November of 1982, and I came back. And I came back to some wonderful theater experiences. I did 4 productions with the one and only Earl Warner. We did Lights, otherwise known as if you wait till all the lights are green, you'll never get into town. That was fantastic. Did the first ever Talk Tent. Talk Tents 1 and 2 I was in, and then Desiree. I'll never forget Desiree. Earl Warner showed up at my house. And he told me, I want you to do this play with me, but I know you can tell me no. And I said, oh, Earl, I would never tell you no. Anything you want me to do, I would do. There is not a play that you could give me that I would refuse to do. He said, all right, whatever you say. But you read this play, and I am going to drive around, and I'm going to come back, and I'm going to hear what you have to say. Earl, you don't have to do that. I can do the play. No, you read it first. So Earl gone driving around. When Earl come back and present himself at my door, I said, Earl, he's a madman. I ain't doing that play. I ain't doing that play, not in Barbados, I ain't doing that play. Listen, there's a woman, the woman is in the play, is masturbate at the foot of a cross. In Barbados, I ain't doing that play, and then she's kill a baby. And anyway, so we ended up doing Desiree. And I've always thought that those shows that I did with Earl Warner made up for the fact that I'd never gone to theater school, had absolutely no training whatsoever. But when you work with a master like that, I learned. And so those early experiences shaped everything that happened after that. When I went back up to Canada, I went back up in 1985, and it was fantastic because the same theatre company that I'd worked with, the Pelican Players company, this first multicultural neighborhood theatre, we went practically on this whirlwind tour. And we were in London, and we went to the Edinburgh Fringe, and we went to the Stage Door Festival in Holland, and it was fantastic. And it continued from there. A lot of my early work was consciousness-changing work, issue-related work, theater that was about issues and changing people's minds about stuff. So I have done plays about homophobia, plays about spousal abuse, plays about homelessness, plays all of them. We just did them. And this was in the heyday. This was the early 90s. Money was abounding in Canada. The Canadian government was throwing money at the arts. The arts was seen as this vital tool for social change. The one that I spent the most time on, I remember, was the Working People's Picture Show. And we played this for unions all over the place. And it was great because the set was boxes. And so we'd have to haul these boxes out, put up these boxes, and the whole backdrop was all these boxes with the Working People's Picture Show around them. And then every evening we'd have to take them down. And a bunch of women traveling around in a big van. Oh, I remember that van. We used to call it the Black Bitch. And the big Black Bitch, actually. And there was a big hole in the floor at some point because we had no money. So in winter, it could get interesting traveling and staying in a motel room, and it's about 5 or 6 women, and yeah, all we could afford was a double room, so we're all, 6 women were trying to sleep in one big double bed. It was really quite interesting. So yes, those were my early experiences in theater. My best and my worst experiences in theater, I don't know. It was mostly all good. I mean, when you think about it, the being able to do what you love doing and are good at and have somebody pay you for it is good. There's no negative to that. My best theater experiences had, I think, almost more to do with seeing what the potency, what the power of theater is, what it can do to other people. And 2 of my memories about that are from my early experiences in theater. And I tell this story all the time. I had come off doing, my second child had been born, so I was 30. And I had just finished playing an 8-year-old. And it was a bit of a stretch because I was nursing my second child at the time, trying to find my inner child. But this child was an abused child, and it was a play that we were doing for the Children's Aid Society of Ontario. And this 8-year-old girl had basically been pimped out by her crack-addicted mom. And so she was talking about that, of being raped and all of this. And I finished, and it was quite a harrowing experience to go through this thing every day. So this was back in the bad old days, and I used to smoke cigarettes, about 25 of them every day. So as soon as I come off stage, I'm out and I'm back, and I'm just smoking my cigarette, just trying to come down, get out of this world. And this kid must have been about 13, 14. He comes and he sits down next to me and he asks me for a cigarette. You look at him, and the mother in me immediately comes up and is like, I'm not giving a cigarette to a kid. I looked at him, I looked in his eyes, and I went, okay. And I gave him the cigarette. He sat there next to me, and we sat there in silence for a while, and he's smoking. And then he proceeded to tell me some of the most horrific stuff I have ever heard that he had suffered at the hands of his step-parents. And I knew that what he was telling me that day, his social worker hadn't heard. No psychiatrist had heard. His case worker hadn't heard. Nobody had heard it. What happened was he knew full well that he was sitting next to a grown woman smoking a cigarette. But in his heart, he was talking to an 8-year-old girl that he had just seen undergo some of the harrowing experiences that he had gone through. And I remember when he first started talking and you saw where it was going, I was terrified because I felt as though I was supposed to do something. What am I supposed to do? I'm not trained. I have no idea what I'm supposed to say to him. And I wanted to stop him midstream and say, let me get somebody for you because I can't help you. Thank goodness I had enough intuition to realize after a while that he didn't want me to do anything. I didn't have to say a word. All I had to be was a willing receptacle for what he was spewing. And he had decided that I was the person, and I knew that I could hold it. And I could hold it because I had gone through stuff like him. And that's when I went, wow, wow, that's the power of theater. I saw it again when the group, Nightwood Theatre, was a feminist theatre company, and we were doing a show about spousal abuse. And it was hard-hitting, all these hard-hitting monologues about being beaten and stuff. And we'd actually gone out to Stratford, where I ended up working as an actor. But at that point, we were going to take this show, and we were going to perform for some women's club or the other. Very rich, very well put together women. And we were asking for funding, basically. So we do our show, and, you know, all these women, it's amazing how you can tell when people are really, really rich. There's just a look. And so we performed for these really, really rich women, and the director did her spiel, and we asked for funding for the theater company because of all this good work we're doing. And then across the room, I see this tall, blonde ice goddess in a little black number and a string of pearls that would have supported our theater company for a year. And she's walking towards me, and you're sort of going, yeah? And she walks up, and she envelops me in this hug, and there's tears pouring down her face. And she said, thank you. Thank you. He beat me every week for 10 years. Thank you. And she walked off. And again, that spoke to the power of theatre, because this was a society woman. I doubt very much she had admitted it to anybody else. It's simply not the done thing. One keeps one's dirty laundry behind closed doors. But to have it there in front of her face and the power of it. So I think those are some. And then, I mean, I have so many wonderful moments when Stratford was one of them. This untrained short girl from Barbados with no theatre training whatsoever, standing on the Stratford stage, the biggest theatre in Canada, 1,200, 1,300 people doing Shakespeare with some of the best Shakespearean actors on the planet, as far as I'm concerned. You know, it was kind of interesting that I think we were well into the first season when I finally got up the nerve to ask somebody, so, in my best acquired Canadian accent, you know, so this iambic pentameter thing that you guys are talking about, what is it? I didn't know. They taught me Shakespeare at Queen's College, but I can't remember anybody telling me about no iambic pentameter. But the language was a joy. I just liked the feel of it in my mouth. And of course, if you listen, you figure that it has a rhythm, so you pick up the rhythm from other people and you go with it. So, I mean, standing out there on the main stage with Colm Feore, I think, was one of the high points. But the thing that beat that was when I started telling our own stories. I had spent so much of my career telling other people's stories. And then a bunch of us got together in Toronto and we thought, we have to tell our own. And I remember being in Harlem Duet, and I was so glad that that was the show that I won my first award for, because we were telling Black stories. And then founding the Obsidian Theatre Company, when we took responsibility for founding, instead of going knocking on people's doors and going, listen, it is really racist of you not to tell our story, because after all, you get public funding, and you have to, because it's not nice that you don't. After years and years of doing that, then you realize you have to take responsibility to tell your own story yourself. You cannot depend on anybody to do it. So to have watched it come full circle and to be able to found the Obsidian Theatre Company and take that kind of responsibility. I mean, standing on the shoulders of those who had gone before, Via Riccaggio, Black Theatre Canada, and all of the rest of it, that was a really good feeling as well. Bringing the Polished home to Barbados, that was fantastic. I could go on. There are a lot of good ones. Worst? I think the worst experiences that I've had have mostly to do with reviews that you're not supposed to read. You're never supposed to read reviews. I ran for the paper each time. Most of the time, it was very gratifying to see what they said about the play that I was in and about me. And then there was the odd occasion when it wasn't. And when you really wished, you really, really wished that you had not read the newspaper at all. And funnily enough, one of those was associated with the Polished Whole. The Polished Whole was a labor of love for me in it. It was a co-production between the Obsidian Theatre Company in Toronto and the Frank Collymore Hall, the Central Bank here. And we worked and we worked and we worked on this piece. And the critics hated it. They hated it. And it hurt. It hurt so much. Now, it helped that it was record box offices for the theatre company. We operated at a 90% house for the entire 4-week run. So somebody liked it, but the critics lacerated it. And that one hurt. So that's it's all built around that. And then there was another awful one. I think the only time that I was ever reviewed by an American newspaper, something like New York Times or something, and somebody called me and said, they reviewed Twelfth Night in the New York Times. I said, yeah, read it to me. And they went, you sure? I went, well, it's the New York Times. Yeah, read me the thing. And they said something about a stocky Olivia who came out of street theatre, and it showed. So it was a little painful. But I remember when a youngster out in Stratford came to me and she'd had a really bad review written about her. And I'd been helping to coach the young company put them through their paces, helping Marty Mariden. And she was devastated. She said she could not go on the next night. She just could not go on. Because they basically said she didn't know what she was doing. And she said she couldn't do it. She can't do it. I can't go on. I just can't do it. It's awful. I'm awful. They said it was awful, and I'm awful, and I'm not going on. So I said, listen, I want you to do me a favor. Upstairs, if you go into a special room in the office suite here at Stratford, you're going to find a big book sitting on a coffee table. And in it is every single review that has ever been written about the stuff that's going on. And you'll find all the recent reviews, all the stuff that you're doing now. Go and read through some of those and come back to me. Tell me who your favorite actress is out here. Oh, Goldie Semple. Goldie Semple is the best. She's absolutely amazing. I mean, she's the best actress in the world. I want to be just like her when I grow up. Okay. Go and read them and then tell me what they say about Goldie Semple. So she came back to me later on that day and she said, I found a review that said that Goldie Semple cannot act and should find an alternative career. And I said, good. You think you're better than Goldie Semple? No! Good. Put it in perspective. There's always going to be somebody who doesn't like you. Now, mind you, when it's about you, it's a little harder to take your own advice, but I have to remember that kid. I have to remember that you can go through the page and you're going to find somebody who says, Alison Seeley-Smith, the best thing since sliced bread. Alison Seeley-Smith needs to go back home to Barbados and go and sell paint. So do your best, get out there, and don't do like me. Do not read reviews. Current state of theatre in Barbados or the world? I don't know a lot about the current state of theatre in the world. I don't know. The current state of theatre in Barbados leaves a little bit to be desired. There is some interesting stuff happening. It's not like there's no theatre. If you look around, and I think this year, 2014, 2013 and 2014 were actually pretty good years in terms of the quantity of plays. I think what's happening is that not enough people are getting enough practice. Acting is something that you need to do. You can go to school, you can sit down and you can talk about it, but unless you're constantly doing it, and you're doing it with different directors, doesn't matter that you can do your theatre and you're doing, I mean, what is the average actor here in Barbados? How many times a year do you think they perform? I would say that a lot of them probably happy to work once a year. If they get 2, they're lucky. If they get 3, to jump in up and down. Correct me if I'm wrong. And the chances are that they may end up, if they're not lucky, they may end up working with the same director. I didn't go to theatre school. The only way that I learned was I learned from my fellow actors, and I learned from directors who were demanding things of me. But on the other hand, stuff is happening, and what pleases me is that despite the lack of support, because theatre is one of those things, I mean, I come from Canada. And Canada is one of those places that had decided that culture and the arts were one of the things that they were going to take money and they were going to spend it on, because the idea of Canadian identity was central. They were stuck between a colonial past, just like Barbados, and then that cultural behemoth to the south, the US, that just ruled everything. So between England and the US, Canada was trying to carve out its little space of who are we? And the only people who can truly answer that question are your artists. There's nobody else that can provide you with those answers. And so they put a lot of money into it. So again, I was really lucky. I came up with people who decided that theatre was important and that they were going to subsidize it. And there were grants. You can get grants. I mean, I spent most of my life just writing grants, writing project grants. And you were able to go from project funding to annual funding that took care of your operating costs to multi-year funding, which meant that you were able to do 2 years without having to worry about where the next set of stuff was coming from, a three-year arc. And then you come here and there's no real targeted support. You get it done the best that you can. And so of course what happens is that you have some good, you have some bad, there's no consistency. And most important, I think, if Barbadian theatre is going to sort of hit the world stage, we need to have published plays. It's fine even that we sit down here and we go, oh my gosh, I saw Patrick Foster last night. He was absolutely amazing in this piece. The thing is that that play is probably not written anywhere, so that students at the University of Toronto or students Berkeley, somebody wants a piece of Barbadian theatre that they want to do. Where is it? We have no classics in the Caribbean. We don't perform our classics. Not that we don't have classics, but the only reason that things become classics is because people produce them over and over and over again. Somebody said Shakespeare was good. And so each generation does Shakespeare. Somebody said Tennessee Williams was good. So they keep producing Tennessee Williams. When was the last time that you saw a great piece, when you saw actors like Patrick Foster and D'Astra Brown and all of these people who actually have skills and experience? When was the last time they got to sink their teeth into a great, iconic Caribbean piece? We don't do it. And classics are a distillation of a people's perspective on the world and on themselves. And we don't perform them. So that's a bit of a problem for me. We have play-making techniques, we have play creation techniques, but we're not focusing enough on the strict discipline that it takes to get on paper a play that has gone through numerous drafts, that changes after the first, the second, and the third production of it until it is something that you can put between 2 pages and know that kids all over the world can go, oh my gosh, I really want to do this play. Like, it comes from Barbados and it's really cool. Can we do that one? Until that happens, we don't have a theatre scene, and we will not have a theatre scene. I want a national theatre company. It's on my bucket list of things that I want to do. I want to see the production of musical theatre. There's a lot of talk now about the cultural industries. The performing arts, of course, get left off a lot when we talk about the cultural industries, and it's hard for me to push that one because, of course, I recognize that theatre is a thing that is subsidized. A lot of theatre does not make money. The theatre that does make money globally are musicals. And so we have a lot of issue-related theatre in Barbados. I mean, if I see another AIDS play, I ain't know what I'm going to do. But I know why it happens, and that is because that's where the funding is. So that's what we do. But where are the glorious stories told in song and dance, you know? Where is, oh, thereafter Patrick is going to kill me. It's Rachel Pringle and the something young man. That needs to be produced. I want to do Bridgetown, the musical. There was another one. Our folklore should be done as big musicals. There's a place for it. And so I think that's what I would like to do. I would love to have a gathering somewhere of some of the best theatre people that we have. I mean, that's my focus. Some people's focus is on development and teaching young people, and that's great, and that needs to be done. That's not my thing. I would like to gather some of the people who would be professional in another context and put them through their paces so that we're just churning out stuff, readings and workshop productions, and that's what I'd like, a space where good theatre people can gather and feed each other and tell our stories and let our stories take their rightful place on the world stage and in the world theatrical canon, and not just keep doing our own little thing sporadically. I don't know if it'll happen. Read theatre and read them aloud. Just know what good theatre is. And the problem with that, though, is that you often can't appreciate good theatre by reading it in a book. Theatre is meant to be expressed, and it's meant to be seen. So if you want to get into theatre, see as much theatre as you possibly can. Get your friends together and just read it out loud. Call people. They got people in Barbados who know about theatre. Beg them to come and just watch your friends. Get them a meal. Say, if you come by me, I can cook something really nice for you. And what I want you to do is watch me and my friends read this theatre piece and just give us some critique. And for the writers, don't think that you're going to come and that anybody's going to produce the first draft of your script. We miss a little bit of dramaturgy. And by dramaturgy, I don't necessarily mean sitting down with Isel Phillips and letting her give you critique and ask you questions. That's one level of dramaturgy. You need to do that. The next thing you need to do is to have it workshopped. You need to put it up on its feet. You need to see it. Obsidian Theatre Company, we used to keep a play in development for 3 to 4 years before it hit our main stage. And that's because theatre costs each play costs about 120,000 Canadian dollars to produce, anywhere from 80 to 120,000 dollars. Well, I'm not putting that stuff up, and I only get one shot at it. I'm a small theatre company. So I have one shot at a main stage production for the year. So it's going to go through its paces. But here we write, we sit down, we talk about it, and then the playwrights fully expect that somebody is going to invest a major amount of money and put the stuff up, and it ain't ready. So we have to get used to dramaturgy that's not just one-on-one dramaturgy. There need to be more people like Iso Phillips who have that kind of eye, that ability, and being able to critique and give feedback to a writer is a precious, precious thing. Not everybody can do it. Sometimes I think of myself as a fairly good dramaturg, but I have to stop myself sometimes, because what you end up doing is telling writers how to write a play the way that you would write it. And that is not your job. Your job is to help them get the play that they want to write. Even if in the back of your head you're going, I have no idea. So why did I wrong will write it? So wait, what Patrick really doing? Why can't I? But that is what they want to do. And that's a skill. And I don't even do enough of it. So I have to constantly tell myself, stop, stop, stop. This is their play. But we need that, but we also need to take our dramaturgy to another level and do the stage readings and do the workshop, the workshop productions of it before they hit the main stage. Magic. There is nothing like theatre. I mean, you know, film is the sexy thing to do. Film is the thing that makes the money. Theatre is magic. Film doesn't even come close. Film, you want me to be a queen? You dress me like a queen. You put a crown on my head. Somebody goes out and makes or buys this fantastic throne. Theatre, I can be like this. And I act. I tell you I'm a queen, and I tell you this chair is my throne, and you go with it. Those lights come down. You willingly suspend that disbelief, and you go with me. And it's visceral. It's immediate. You can smell me working on that stage, and you have a response to it that's like nothing else. So theatre is the only thing I think that can blend all the other media. And I'm not just talking dance and music, that's a given. But film can be in theatre. It's hard for film to embrace theatre. It's very easy for theatre to embrace film. And you're having a lot of mixed media productions, and I'd love us to keep exploring that so that our theatre is constantly relevant and it keeps the young people on their toes. Let's bring that technology in it. Theatre can do it. Theatre can encompass it all. It is the most potent art form known to humankind. It is the oldest. That impulse to sit in the dark and tell each other stories goes all the way back.